Hey, what's up guys? So, there's two new radar detectors that are going to be coming out very soon. They are the successors to the Uniden DFR6 and DFR7, which I talk about quite a bit as being the best budget detectors. Well, Uniden is actually going to be discontinuing this and updating it with some new changes. The new versions of the detectors are going to be called the Uniden DFR8 and the DFR9. There's going to be a number of different changes that you'll find with the DFR7 versus the DFR9, for example. First things first, if you take a look at the detectors, you'll notice that aesthetically they look pretty different, right? The case itself is redesigned. Under the hood, though, it's actually very similar. It's based on the same platform, so we've got the same performance and we've got the same level of BSM filtering. However, if you look at the face of the detector, you'll notice they're different. Now, the DFR9, the face of it has the same color OLED display that we have on the R3 and the R1. Uniden has also brought over many of the features that they've added to the R1 and the R3. They're bringing that over to the DFR8 and DFR9 as well. Additionally, since it's a hardware update, they've added something that even the R1 and the R3 don't have, which is an ambient light sensor, meaning this detector has the ability to automatically adjust the display brightness just based on the light around you. It doesn't have to rely on the GPS the way the R3 does. It just relies on the light around you, which I think is a better solution. Plus, it also applies to non-GPS detectors like the DFR8. Now, speaking of which, if you take a look at the two new detectors, this is the DFR8, this is the DFR9. If you take a look, they're actually very similar. They're pretty much identical. It's been confusing me all day figuring out which is which. The only way that I found to tell the difference is if you take a look at the face of the two detectors, the DFR8 will say city on the front, the DFR9 will say mark on the right-hand side as far as that button to mark a GPS location. So sensitivity adjustments versus a GPS-based feature. Otherwise, the detectors are aesthetically identical. Let's go ahead and plug in the detector. We'll mount it up on the windshield and go over all the different settings and options. There's actually quite a few. I thought it was just a cosmetic change and like an auto-dimming display, but once I got into the settings, it turns out there's a bunch of new features that they're bringing over from the R1 and the R3, and they're bringing into these new ones that changes kind of quite a bit of stuff. So let's go ahead and pop the detector on the windshield and we'll take a closer look at it. All right, so starting off, let's go ahead and power on the detector, and then we'll hit it with radar so you can see it in action.
KA band 3466.
You can see it'll announce the frequency, and it can display it as well out to 2 digits, and we have the same visual display that we have with the R3. Speaking of which, for those of you guys who are familiar with the R3,
Menu.
as we start going into the menu here, a lot of this is going to look super familiar. So we've got different sensitivity options.
Highway, city, advanced.
Just like the R1 and the R3. And we have controls over the sensitivity of all the individual radar bands. This is a little bit different though. You'll notice when we start going through, it goes down in 20% increments instead of 10, and it goes down to 40% or 100% for max sensitivity. KA band, same thing. And then we'll run through. The next new feature that we have compared to the DFR7 is the red light camera quiet ride. So basically high-speed muting. If you're on the highway above this speed, it can mute any red light cameras nearby. The KA frequency announcements, as you heard, it announced 34.7 frequency for us. So that's a new feature here that's brought over from the R3. Individual band controls. As far as the KA band segmentation, this is going to be just like the DFR7.
KA wide, KA narrow.
So there's no option for individual band segmentation the way we have on the R3. It's just KA wide and KA narrow. So this is going to be like the DFR7. We've got KA priority, so basically how the detector responds when there's multiple signals present.
Signal priority, KA priority.
Again, an R1 and R3 feature that's brought over above and beyond what we have on the DFR7. That's cool. So this is a new feature that's going to be coming in the next firmware update, so sneak peek here for the R3. Check this out. Lockouts are available, optionally, on KA band as well. So for those of you guys who have KA band speed signs, this detector is going to be able to lock them out. By default, of course, most people are going to want to run with their lockouts only operating on X band and K band, and the detector is now going to give you the option, which is pretty cool. We've got our all threat display, so this is new for this platform, brought over from the R series. We have a bunch of different color options. Let's run through these real quick. Again, same thing as the R's. Okay. Mode display, same thing as the R's, how it displays information when there's no signal present. We've got more information that we can display here,
Speed, compass.
like speed and compass. That's new. That's an R series thing.
Compass, volt, out, speed, compass.
Cool. We have our customizable alert tones for the different bands. This is also like the R's. So something new that we have above and beyond the DFR 6 and 7. Auto mute. The DFR7 has this, but it does not have the ability to choose how loud or quiet the detector becomes after it drops down to the auto-muted level. So our series feature brought over to the DFR8 and 9. We have controls over dark mode, as well as, oh, here, let's do this.
Exit.
We'll go ahead and drop into the automatic display brightness adjustments.
Dim. Dimmer. Dark. Off. Auto.
So when we go in auto here, now when we go into the menu, we have an option here to control the auto dimming display. So when we go in here, we have the ability to control how bright it gets in the daytime when you're in the sunlight. I'll leave it at bright, as well as how dark it gets at night, or optionally it seems like when you're in the shade, which is where I am right now. So we can say dim level and turn the display dark or even off altogether. I normally like dimmer. One thing that I've noticed with this detector, and I think this might be something Uniden will need to tweak, you'll notice when I exit the menu, it's going to drop down, since I have it in auto, down to the dimmer setting. Now, it's daytime right now, but I am in the shade, and I think that's enough for the ambient light sensor to think it's dim or dark out, and so it's triggering kind of the nighttime mode. I think Uniden needs to work on their thresholds as far as what they consider day versus night, so that, you know, even if I'm in the shade like this, the detector will still display as a daytime display. So that's something I think they're going to need to tweak, but it does have the option, and we'll see kind of once the detector is formally released, right, if they adjust that, and hopefully they do. Now moving on, we've got backlight controls, quiet ride, this is the same, daylight savings time stuff, this is all the same, and I'm currently running firmware 1.00/1.01, GPS database, and there we go.
Exit.
And there's a quick look at the DFR8 and 9. These units, they are actually test units, so if you take a look at the detector, the back of them, they don't actually even have serial numbers or anything on the back, so these are the ones that we're going to be using for testing and development just to get everything ready for production release. As you can see, it's not quite ready. I think the display brightness thing is the first thing that I've noticed as far as something that could use a little bit of tweaking. But yeah, as far as the expected release date of these detectors, it should be late July or early August is what we're being told as far as when they're going to be available. Price-wise, the DFR8 should be $229, and the DFR9 is going to come out at $329. And both of them are now going to be actually $30 higher than where the DFR6 and 7 their MSRPs were. Now, what's kind of interesting, you know, if you're wondering, oh, should I get the new ones, or maybe should I get the older ones if I don't have one yet, or should I upgrade? Let's talk about that real quick. I think that's kind of interesting. The DFR8, if you want the non-GPS one, that's going to be $229, whereas the DFR6, you can now get it for like $179. So yeah, the DFR6 is going to be cheaper than the DFR8. With the DFR9 versus DFR7, that one gets even more interesting just because of the fact that this one, instead of $299, it's now $249. And as I mentioned, there's a 10% off coupon. If you type in Vortex Radar, you get another 10% off. So you're looking at about $100 less than the DFR9. So for those of you guys looking for like a real budget detector, you can get one of the DFR7s kind of while supplies last, that whole thing, because they are going to be discontinued. And I'll have links for all the detectors and all this information down in the video description. But that price-wise is kind of how they land. Now the question is like, okay, well, this guy has a lot of cool additional features. It's got the new OLED display, it's got the auto dimming display, it's got a lot of the features, as you saw, that they brought over from the R1 and the R3. So it has a lot of features that the DFR7 doesn't. And so that, of course, is something to factor in. If you want the extra features, yeah, you can spring for the new detectors. And then eventually the decision is going to get a lot simpler just because of the fact that the DFR6 and 7 are going to go away. And once they're not available, I guess you can only get them used or whatever, you know. They're going to be going away, and then we're left with the DFR8 and 9. Now that kind of makes it interesting as well. If you're like, okay, well, DFR9 versus R3. Okay, well, if we take a look at that, here's the DFR9, and here's the R3. Feature-wise, they're a lot more similar now, you know, especially with the new display and menu options and Ka band lockouts and all that kind of stuff. Yes, the R3, of course, it's going to have longer range. It's got better performance. It's got Ka band segmentation for individual segments. It's got MRCD detection. It's got a number of features that this guy doesn't. And so if you're looking for the longest performing one, of course, you're still going to want to spring for the R1 or the R3. It is kind of interesting to note that the newest ones do have the auto-dimming display that's non-GPS related, so that is an advantage of these ones besides just price. So kind of interesting, you know. I've been thinking about calling this like a baby R3, but it's actually bigger than the R3, so that's kind of interesting. But anyway, there's a quick look here at the DFR8 and 9. We're going to be doing some more testing, of course, with the new detectors. It's based on the same platform. It's the same thing under the hood, so the performance is expected to be the same as the DFR6 and 7, but the testers are going to be doing the usual round of testing just to confirm and verify and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there you go. There's a quick look at the DFR8 and DFR9. I'll link you down in the video description to the full discussion of the new detectors on RDF, so you can read on there, you can join into the discussion, or you can ask any questions down in the comment area below. So awesome. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. So time to share with you guys a first look for a brand new set of radar detectors. You know the